So I have a very special treat today. Erika Slezak, who is so beloved as Vicki from One Life to Live and iconic to the daytime genre, is with me from Connecticut. Love you for doing this, Erika.
My pleasure.
And we are here because Tuesday night, May 19th, The Story of Soaps is airing in a 2-hour special on ABC. Right. Erika is included in the special, and if they didn't include her in the special, they would have heard it from me because she was so iconic to ABC and the genre. So Erika, so nice to see you. How is everybody doing in your neck of the woods during the pandemic?
Well, we are fortunately very, very well. I have both my children, my adult children here. Amanda was working at a shop and of course they closed. But hopefully they will reopen soon. And Michael is upstairs doing his computer stuff all the time. So it's lovely to have everybody here. It's interesting to have a whole family together again after all these years. And it's wonderful. As I said in my email to you, it's just a lot of cooking. A lot of cooking, but it's fun. It's fun. It's wonderful. Thank goodness we're all healthy. We're safe. Michael won't let us, Brian and I, go anywhere, or Brian and me go anywhere. He does all the shopping, Amanda does all the errands, and Michael and Amanda do everything. We're not allowed to go to stores, which makes sense.
Yeah, of course, protecting you.
And we're extremely well. All we do really is walk the dogs around the neighborhood. And we live in a very quiet neighborhood, and if you see somebody, you kind of run to the other side of the street.
So you're not going stir crazy at all? You're okay?
No. There are times, sure, as everybody does, when you think, oh my gosh, I wish I could go and do the dopey little things I do every day. I want to go to the market and catch up with my friends that I see there, but that's all right. I'll go and do that another time.
Right.
I've been doing a lot of reading. I've cleaned every closet 13 times, a lot of cooking. Yeah, we're just doing fine. And now that spring is here, we can be outside in the garden more, which is lovely.
That's great. Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know everyone's okay. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about your journey into daytime and soaps and what you went through as part of your and one of the most wonderful parts of your story is, you know, you were the daughter of Walter Slezak, who was such a great actor.
Thank you.
And beloved by a lot of people as well. When you ended up on a soap opera, what did your dad think of that? What was his perception of what a soap would be? I know he came on later on One Life to Live, but originally, what did he say to you?
When I called him and I had been in rep for 4 years.
Right. And
rep is just a seasonal thing. You work for 9 months and then you go away for 3 months and then you come back for 9 months and hopefully, you know, that will continue. And after 4 years, I took a bit of a break because I was kind of exhausted. And I spent a few months with my parents in Switzerland. And then I came home and I immediately went to Buffalo to play Desdemona in Othello there. When I came back, I got a call from my agency, not my agents, that a woman that I had met, Joan Dincheco, who was a casting director, wanted me to come and audition for a new role on One Life to Live. And I said, wonderful. And they sent me the script and I rehearsed with the actor Bernard Grant, Bernie, and we played the scene in a room, not on camera, in a room in front of Agnes Nixon and Joan Dincheco and Doris Quinlan, who was our producer. And I think Charlotte Weil was there. She was the associate producer. And at the end, and it was at like 9:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, March the 16th of 1971, we did the audition and David seemed quite pleased, the director, and nobody else said anything. I mean, literally nothing.
Nothing.
It was these stony faces and they said, thank you very much for coming in. And I left and Bernie kind of coughed and he said, do you want to get a cup of coffee or something? And I said, no, I have to, go see my agent. He went, oh, good. Okay, fine. It was like he thought, okay, she's not getting this role. So,
so
not going to be nice, but except that he was lovely. I went down to my agent's office and he'd been away and this was his first day back. And while I was there, they called and he spoke to them. I didn't know it was them on the phone. And he kept saying, yes, okay, yes, I see. And then he finally said, no, absolutely flat out no. And he hung up. And he said to me, that was One Life to Live. And my heart kind of went, oh. And I said, was that what the no was? And he said, no, you got the part. And I went, wow. And I said, what was the no at the end? And he said, the actress who is playing the role currently is a client of mine. And he said, nobody told me or her that she was looking to be replaced, and they want me to call her and tell her. And I said, no, you do that yourself. And so they did. But in the meantime, my head is racing, and I thought, I got a role, I got a job. Oh, I'll probably have a month. I can lose 5 pounds. I can, get an apartment. because I was staying with a girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
And he said, you start tomorrow, which was a major shock. Cut to, I ran back to my place where I was staying with my girlfriend. I picked up the phone. I called my father and my mother in Switzerland, screaming, I got a job, I got a job, I got a job. And my father said, what are they paying you? That's the first thing he said. And I told him, which was more per day than I was making a week in repertory. Now, you don't work 5 days a week, but even so. And all I remember him saying is, don't ever give that job up. And I told him what it was. And I said, I was, it was a soap opera or daytime drama. And he said, that's positively brilliant, wonderful. It's different every day. And they were delighted for me. No one was more delighted than I was.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was
so
kind of a miracle. And I ran up to the studio, very nervous, and nobody knew that I was being recast as Vicki. They called, I think, Lynn Benish, who played Meredith, my sister, and Ernie Graves, who played my father, Victor, because I had scenes with them, and they said, you have a new actress starting tomorrow as Vicki. Nobody else knew. And we started rehearsal at 8:30 in the morning. We were renting in a one-bedroom apartment in a building near the studio because there was no rehearsal space in the studio. And they said, be there at 8:30. So, of course, I was there at 8. And with my script that I was clutching. And of course, nobody was there. So I'm sitting on the floor in the hallway of this apartment building, and people are going to work, passing me, wondering, what is this moron doing sitting on the floor in front of an apartment? And finally, the stage manager, Sidney Andrews, came, and he let me in, and he said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, my name is Erika Slezak, and I'm playing Vicki. And he said, you are? And I said,
oh, no.
Yes. Nobody knew. Only Lynn and Ernie knew. And everyone who came into rehearsal looked at me the same way. It was like, why are you here? Is she sick? The other one, and I said, no, I'm playing the part. And when it finally got explained, thank the Lord for Lynn and Sidney and Ernie, who held my hand through that whole day.
Oh.
And my hairdresser, Willis Hanchett, who was just adorable. And he said, you're going to be all right. You're going to be fine. Don't be nervous. And I said, I'm too scared to be nervous. And that was my first day. And this lasted throughout the 42 years I was on the show. Every day was different. Every day was exciting. Every day, different people and wonderful actresses and actors that I worked with, who were regulars and who were just there for a week or a day or a month. It was, I think, the most fun anybody could have. And I got to come home every night.
And did you know when you started on the show how central Vicki was to the show?
I had no idea.
You did not know?
I had no idea. I didn't know who she was. Right. The audition scene had been between Vicki and Steve, but they said, oh, that's not what you're reading for. This is just a scene to read. And I sort of found out from the other actors who Vicki was. I didn't know anything about her. Nobody told me anything.
Talk about being thrown in the fire. You were just like, yeah.
Definitely in the deep end.
Yeah. And I think I remember all of the castmates you had at One Life to Live.
Oh, I do.
Saying that nobody was more prepared, that knew everybody else's lines but you. You knew your lines and everybody else's. But do you think that came from the very beginning of, from your start there, wanting to make sure everything was okay? Where do you think that
yes.
came from? Yeah.
I had the best training I think an actor can have. I went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. They really, oh my God, they train you so well. and they have you prepared for anything and everything. And one of the things was, always know your lines. You are useless if you don't know your lines, because it shows. And for me, it was helpful to know everybody else's lines so that I knew if they stopped and weren't going to finish, I should just start my line. I was always very careful never to feed anybody a line, never to correct anybody. But to this day, I still do that. I learn everybody's lines in the scene. It helps me. And especially when I was playing Nikki, having to learn both parts, that helped a lot for that.
Since you brought up Nikki, I think one of the things that this genre does so well is tell these social topics and true stories that people have experienced, like no other genre can do, because you can tell it kind of in real time and through the different phases of it. And when they gave Vicki dissociative identity disorder and handed you the ball with that, which happened later in the show, when you talked
Much later,
what was your initial reaction to knowing that that was going to happen? Because they had changed the story a little bit.
Yes. Right? It was always kind of left up in the air as to why Nikki existed. Agnes never had dealt with it in the beginning, unintentionally. It was kind of a thing way out there. And I played Nikki a couple of times, but only in flashbacks, where Joe Riley was remembering or Meredith was remembering. And when Michael Malone and Susie Bedsoe, who was the producer at the time, when they decided that they really wanted to deal with it, and they called Agnes and they said, we'd very much like to do this. And she said, absolutely, go for it. And we had a lovely lunch. They invited me to join them. I was very impressed and very honored. They said, if we're going to do this, we have to do it right. And we had an expert, a psychiatrist who dealt with multiple personalities, come and talk to me. And I did quite a lot of research. And the important thing there was, because we were on once a day, and if the character, if it wasn't Vicki, if it was Nikki or Jean, we had to establish instantly for the audience to tell them who this is and not have them wonder which of the alters is it. So we had to make them very specific, where in fact, in real life, they're not necessarily that specific.
There's just a slight shift, not so dramatic, right.
But it was a great, and I mean it, honor to be given that to play. Michael Malone was wonderful in that he let me know in advance when he was bringing a new character in, a new personality, so that I could prepare for that and find something a little different, so that Tori was different from Nikki and different from Jean and and Princess. It was like a gift. It was an absolute gift that they honored me with that.
Was there one alter most fun to play?
Oh, Nikki. Who wouldn't want to be completely irresponsible? Doesn't give a hell about anybody or anything except herself. Who wouldn't want to do that?
And during the time when you had to play multiple parts, multiple at the same time, what was your life like at that time? Were you just like, oh my God, were you overwrought as an actress? And when you would go home and prepare, would you like, I'd bring it on? Were you like?
No, I was also, and then my training was, you are not that character. You are you, and you play a part. And when the curtain comes down or they say cut, you go home and you're just Erika. And thank God for my husband, who kept me so grounded all my life. I went home and I was mom, and I would cook and do homework, and it never lived with me. I'd get up in the morning and I'd think about what I was going to do in the day, but it never stayed with me, no.
And you had the great rivalry with Dorian, Robin Strasser, and the two of you really made what soap operas are about also. They had to have a character like Vicki, and they had the opposite in a Dorian. They had to have these two who would be rivals, yet frenemies at times. That was probably one of the highlights for so many people of One Life to Live.
And for me, Robin brings, they say you have to bring something to the table. She brings a Thanksgiving feast every time she shows up. Everything is perfect. And a lot of people kind of faulted her for that because, she was very fussy about that. Mm-hmm. But it was important. It was necessary to be completely Dorian. And again, when it was over, she'd go home and be Robin. But I think those were some of the most fun, most joyous, most wonderful scenes, our relationship. Because off camera, we were very good friends. We are very good friends. I love her. I have great admiration for her.
Yeah, I mean, they were, when they would lock them up together, whatever they would do, you knew it was going to be like, for us, for the audience, it's like, we can't wait to see these two titans in these scenes together.
And they did that. They did that every couple of years, lock us in a room together.
Yes. And then you threw her down the stairs as Tommy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was that.
It wasn't me.
So when you look at this daytime genre, what do you think makes it so unique and so special, and why so many people love it?
I think it's because it is a never-ending story of life. And I say life in quotes because it's everybody's life. That may not apply particularly to you, but there are always things in every story that apply to you, to all of us. And well, it wasn't just Agnes or Phillips, all the people who originated it said, we're going to tell everybody's story through 30 characters or 20 characters. And I think that's what appealed. All the different characters, 5 days a week. In the beginning, I used to watch General Hospital because of our time slot, because when we were half an hour, I had that time off. And I got totally enraptured with it. With the Quartermains and the this and that. It was like watching life. Only half the time you said, thank God that's not my life. And there are people, there are parts of that where it is your life. And I think that's what people related to. Linda Gottlieb once said that it was if Dickens were writing today. And I thought, well, I know what she means. I don't think she can compare it to Dickens, but because they didn't have the time Dickens had to write his books. But it was a story that just continued and continued and continued. He would eventually end it, but his books were like that. They tumbled, they kept going.
So on One Life to Live, you had a lot, Vicki went through a lot, not only DID, but I know one of your favorites was the Old West storyline. I loved the Old West storyline.
I loved it.
And did you love it because Ginny was a different character and it was so completely flipped from Vicki, right?
Okay, I loved it for a lot of reasons. Number one, we got to go to Old Tucson.
There you go.
I have always in my life wanted to ride in a stagecoach, never knowing how vastly uncomfortable it is. And I did get to ride in a stagecoach. And the whole business of the horses and going back in time and the relationship with Clint and all the other characters who were playing their great-grandparents, and Ginny herself being really a forefather of Vicki in her upbringing and everything. And Paul Rausch, who was the producer at the time, it was his idea to do it. The first day on the set, I had a line where I had to say, "Excuse me, please, I'm looking for an hotel." And he kind of pulled me aside. He said, "An hotel?" And I said, "Yes, that is the correct thing. You don't say a hotel, you say an hotel, even though in common usage we say a hotel." But I said commonly. Ginny was an English teacher, and that's how she spoke. And it gave her a whole other dimension. Everything had to be that proper. And she was a lovely character to play, lovely.
And then when they went and when they did Eterna and they were doing the underground thing, and were you, knowing you, were you like, this is so silly, I can't make this work? Or were you just gonna I'll just play it?
You know what? It was silly, but you know what our job is as actors? Make it work. Know your lines and make it work. And we did. If you believe in it, the audience will believe in it. For Bart. I mean, there was a lot of comments about it. You know, this is ridiculous, this underground city. And I said, hey, we're telling a silly story. Go with it. That's all. That's all. That was kind of fun.
Yeah. One of the other delights I know we've talked about is when you got to actually on screen work with Agnes Nixon. There was a moment where, and I thought that was so amazing to have that moment where Vicki goes to heaven, right? And she's like, well, there was that whole thing. Agnes really was instrumental in your career, you could say.
The night we closed, we had a party, That was November, I think, 23rd, 2011. We were meant to be going on with Prospect Park, so nobody thought it was really closing. But Frank Valentini, our producer, asked me to say something. And Agnes, thank goodness, was there. And I thanked her. I said, you gave me a life. You gave me a career. You gave me joy and happiness and work and the pleasure of her company and everybody else's. It was an amazing thing that Agnes did for me. And I would never have known it that day when I auditioned, because her face was very still. She didn't seem pleased or displeased, just nothing. But what she did for me was she gave me a life, a career. I mean, not a real life. She gave me a career.
Right. Vicki was always kind of a role model for a lot of people, like a moral center. Yeah. They learned from Vicki. She was comforting to the audience, and then they never wanted to see her in trouble too. It was so, they didn't want to see something bad happen to her, but we knew something bad would happen to her.
Yeah.
What was it like being that beloved character that so many fans were like adored?
I was very pleased that my portrayal of Vicki meant that to them, that gave that to them, the sense that Vicki was a very moral, non-judgmental, intelligent woman. It was in the script how I behaved, but I always tried to make her as, I don't know what the word is, as even and intelligent as I could. It was important, the way Victor had raised her, the original Victor, not the later Victor. Into a pedophile. I was very pleased always that audiences liked her, and I got a lot of mail from young people, young women especially, saying, gosh, I wish my mother was like you. I wish I could talk to somebody the way your children talk to you. And I thought, well, honey, that's in the script, but I know what you mean. I know.
A lot of people came through One Life to Live. Nathan Fillion, Judith Light, so many people were part of the fabric of the show and chose to go on to do other parts of their career while you stayed as Vicki. Was there ever a time you were like, I'm going to go see if I'm going to go do primetime in films? And
you know what? Every time a contract came up, which in the beginning was every 2 years and then every 4 years, I thought, should I leave? Should I leave? And then I thought, I'm having so much fun. Do I want to go somewhere where I don't know if I'm going to have any success, if anyone will ever hire me? What I really wanted to do at one point was leave and do theater. But by that time I had 2 children, and my husband and I had a mortgage to pay. So it was a security. And I'm not going to say that was the only reason I stayed, because it wasn't. It was mostly because I got to do what I love to do every day that I went to work. And there are very few actors, I think, who can say that, who can work for 42 years and love what they're doing. You can go and do a movie that you might hate, or go and be in a play that's not well received. I just loved going to work, and I loved One Life to Live.
And I think you had such a great role too. It was a wonderful role for an actress.
Hello.
I mean, you got to play so much. Yeah. Speaking of that, Vicki had quite a romantic life too. She had Mark Derwin was, what did you think of that when they did that romance with Ben and Vicki? Were you like worried about that, or did you think, oh, this is going to work?
No, Jill Phelps was a producer, and she said, I'm bringing in a guy for you. And I said, great. Who is he? And she said, his name is Mark Derwin. And I thought, I know the name. And then I met him. She brought him to the studio in the morning. And I looked at him and I went, oh, I know who you are. And I think we hit it off instantly. The fact that Mark himself is much younger than I am, and that Ben was younger than Vicki, worked in our favor. he made Vicki younger. He made Vicki happy. He made her joyful. He made her silly. Things that she had never sort of done, certainly not with any of the other husbands. And that was a huge plus. And I love Mark. He's just a crazy, silly, wonderful, delightful guy. One of my, I used to say each husband was my favorite, but he was one of my favorites. And then Brian Kerwin, who played Charlie, was my other big favorite. A lovely, lovely actor and a wonderful man. And the nice thing was we were friends and we got along. And if you had to discuss something, there was never any acrimony. There was never anything bitter or nasty. You discuss it and you worked it out. And I think that was true of really almost every single guy that I was involved with on the show. Roy Finnis, my God, what an angel, what a doll.
You know, Roy Finnis and you together, it was like two amazing actors together. And I remember when Sloane died and, you know, Vicki was reading to him and the AIDS storyline, there was some really amazing moments on One Life to Live back then.
There were. That was, Agnes started it, and then we had fantastic head writers all the way through. There was the occasional head writer who would, I won't go into that, but for the most part, they were fantastic. Michael Malone was just brilliant. Peggy O'Shea was brilliant. And Ron Carlivati, who really outdid himself for us. And the way he wrapped the show up was so beautiful, beautiful.
How did you get through that final day? How did you? I don't know how you did it. I honestly
Frank, I used to like to be up first so that I could get home to my family. But Frank came to me and he said, on the last day, I'd like you to be up last. And I said, absolutely fine, not a problem. It was hard because the lump in my throat was there all day long. I knew how it was going to end. But saying goodbye to everybody in that studio, that was hard because they were my family too. Our stage manager, Alan Needleman, our prop guys, I used to call them my sons and they called me Mom. It was very hard. And I kind of thought it would have been easier had I gotten through this first, but Frank wanted me to be up last, and that's fine. It was, and at that time, you know, we thought we were going on.
Yeah.
Prospect Park.
Yeah.
In about 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
That, of course, fell apart. It was a hard day. It was hard, and there were a lot of tears.
Yeah.
I can feel it now.
Because we miss you. We all miss you. And we miss One Life and we miss you. And that's what's been so amazing. Whenever I say I've spoken to Erika or post something about you, there is such a huge love and outpouring. I hope you know that. Because I see it in real time, you know, on social media.
Incredibly sweet.
And I think that I wanted to pass that on to you, that there is such love for you, that you've meant so much to so many people. Not just me. I'm telling you, you know, yeah.
That's the greatest compliment you could pay me. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
It was a miraculous time. And the sad thing was that when we went back online with the Prospect Park Company, they really didn't know how to do a soap. They thought, oh, this is cable. We can get risky and whatever. And they threw money at it. But we had four head writers quit in the first 3 months because they weren't trying to tell the stories. They were trying to do nighttime, flashy stuff, cable, you know, they were trying to get away with as much as they could. And that was a shame. That was a shame. And then, of course, it all fell apart. And it's a shame that we ended that way.
Yes, it is. I mean, I remember because I was, you know, there too with that. And, you know, I remember they were like, what if we have so-and-so swear? And what if we have this music thing in there? And what they were trying to get some kind of audience to it instead of playing to the audience that truly wants to see it, the dedicated audience. And by doing that, it kind of was, it was just awkward at times. And
at times.
At times, I'm just
really. Although the best part of it was David Vickers coming down the steps like, you know, be staying alive. It was just brilliant. Tuck Watkins, What a guy.
What a guy. Now,
I'm sorry that Vicki never married him. That would have been funny.
Vicki and David Vickers. Yep.
And I'm sorry that Vicki never married Asa, because that would have been funny.
That would have been amazing.
That
would have been amazing. Now, I know another one of your favorite scene partners was Roger Howarth.
Oh, yes.
How many times people still laugh about when he was dressed up, he was being Vicki, and like all of these things. Why was Roger such a great partner for you, and what did you notice about him as a young man coming onto the show?
Okay, when Roger first started on the show, he was quite different. He was a little bit angry and angsty. And then he went away, and when he came back as Todd, we had a lot of scenes together. And Roger is a very, very inventive and clever actor, but he's also a good actor. And he knows he can never push it beyond the limits of the scene, which other actors tend to do sometimes, so that you're left hanging out on the wash line, literally. And I know one of the first scenes, I had him hiding in my attic, and I brought him baby Star to see his child for the first time. And she was there, and I had brought him some food, and he started messing with the knife and the fork during the scene. And I thought, I'm his sister. And I took his hands and I stopped him, and I said, stop that. And we continued with the scene. And he came to me afterwards. He said, I love that. I loved that. Because it was real. It was in any way distracting or wrong for the scene that he would do that. But since he did do it, I was able to play with him. And we played together very, very well. I like Roger enormously. He's a really interesting man and a very interesting actor. So it was always fun. You
did The Resident. You were on The Resident, and people were like, oh, she's in The Resident. So what has it been like post One Life to Live for you? How has it been a huge adjustment?
Yeah, in the beginning it was. Yeah. And it was mostly because I was so used to a routine.
Right.
I got up at 5. I was out of the house at 5:30. I was in the city by 6:30. And we started rehearsal at 7:15. And that's how my day was structured. And I always knew what day it was because I knew what day I was working. Now I wake up in the morning and I think, is it Wednesday? I don't know. What is it? And I literally have to look because there's no routine. It took me about a year to be really comfortable at home and not feel kind of angsty and antsy, really. And my husband, who was very used to me not being around in the morning, he'd come into the kitchen and he'd sort of do a double take, like, what are you doing here?
Why are you here?
Why are you here? Go away. It took me about a year to get used to it. And then I thought, this is nice. I get to sleep as late as I want. I get to do all the things that I said I was going to do and never did. And years later, I still haven't done them. I've cleaned out some cupboards and stuff because of quarantine. But it's now very pleasant. It's very pleasant. Although I loved going to do The Resident. I loved it. And a lot of the crew there knew me from the show. And they were lovely. And the director and the writer, they were wonderful. And I like doing, I did Blue Bloods last year.
Yes.
An episode of Blue Bloods, which was wonderful. And half the crew there said, oh, we used to work on Another World. Oh, how's Linda Pano doing? And everything, you know, and so, I mean, it's just a big mishmash. It's wonderful. And it was lovely. And working with Len Cariou was lovely. Really a good actor, a really good actor.
Yeah.
He didn't sing though, but anyway.
He didn't sing in the
No. And I got to do a little scene in a film with Jeff Daniels.
Yes.
That they now have a distributor. The film's called Guest Artist, and it's a very interesting story. And I got to shoot a scene with Jeff, which was kind of fabulous.
How cool is that?
Kind of fabulous.
Yeah. So do you think you would ever go back to one of these other soap operas if there was a role offered to you? Would you even do it? Or what do you think?
I've been asked twice, but it was never for anything very interesting. And you know, the one time they asked me, they said, oh, we won't pay your way and we won't pay your hotel. And we, you know, we'll give you just, you know, bare minimum money. And I said, you know what, to fly to California and spend 5 days? No, I don't think so. And it wasn't very interesting. It would depend on the show. It would depend, you know, at this point, because everything's in California.
Yeah.
There are no shows in New York.
Yeah.
It would require a move. And I'm not sure that I would want to schlep my husband and our menagerie with us. If it were for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, yeah.
Yeah, like a guest.
It would depend on what it was.
Got
it would depend. Although I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy at home. And, you know, my agents call me and they say, there's a job here, there's a job there. And I've turned a couple of things down. It depends. It would depend very much on what it is.
What it is.
I'm in a very comfortable situation. You know, I've saved my pennies. We're okay, in spite of what's happening with the stock market. Oh, right. My Lord.
Oh my gosh.
Don't look at that. But we're comfortable. We have a very comfortable home. We're happy here. You know, it's nice.
So 6 Daytime Emmys, Erika, 6 of them. When you look at that now, you reflect back on it as your home and you have 6 Emmys and, you know, you won when there were a lot of soaps on the air too, where the competition wasn't just a small number, but there were a lot of actresses in the field. Yeah. And I remember, wasn't one of the years there were 8 women in the category with you?
Last time I won in 2006, there were 8 awesome women.
Yeah.
Awesome women. And that's when Susan Flannery said, you know, let's all have lunch the day before and not have any kind of enmity or, you know, anxiety or whatever. And we all had lunch at the River Cafe, no, the Water Cafe in New York. We met at about 12:30 and they threw us out at 5 because they had to set up for dinner. We laughed, we told stories. It was fabulous. I didn't know, I had never met Juliet and I knew Martha, but not terribly well.
You mean Juliet Mills and Martha Byrne, right?
Martha Byrne, yes,
Martha, yeah.
And Juliet Mills.
Yeah.
I didn't know Michelle Stafford very well, who's just one of the great human beings on this earth.
Absolutely.
We had the best time, and Cassie and I being nominated together, and Susan Flannery, who's just a wonderful person, just wonderful. And she kind of snuck off at the end, and she had said up front, oh no, we all pay for ourselves. And of course she went off and she paid the bill, which had to have been in the thousands because we drank a lot of champagne.
Right.
And when she came back, you know, we all said, you shouldn't have done that. She said, hey, whoever wins tomorrow pays next year. And I actually got up to, when I won, I was so blown away that I had won over these fabulous actresses. I said to Susan afterwards, I said, okay, I'm paying for lunch next year, which also turned out to be in the thousands in California.
Well, you guys started a tradition now. That happens every year.
I think they do. They still do it. Yeah.
They do.
Yeah. It's a shame. There are only 4 shows left. You know, it's a shame.
And that leads me to the cancellation of One Life to Live, and the day when, you know, you guys found there was the cancellation of All My Children, One Life to Live. And when we're talking about the story of soaps that we're going to be told on TV, you know, this was a show that had been on for 43 years that was being taken away from this audience and was performing very well at the time. It was like in 3rd place, I believe, at the time, where it seemed like it was just, you know, it always felt like the little engine that could show that nobody quite knew what, you know, but it was so good and it had the ratings. How do you feel now about knowing that decision that it was canceled? I mean,
well, I know why the decision was made, and everybody blamed Brian Frantz. Everybody was screaming, oh, Brian Frantz, awful, awful. Brian Frantz had nothing to do with it. He didn't have that kind of power. He was head of daytime for ABC. The decision was made way up top. I don't think Bob Iger actually physically made that decision himself either, but it was money. It was pure and simple money. We weren't making the kind of money that we had been in the beginning, but they were now 500 channels. And when I started, they were, what, 4 or 5. It was pure and simple money. Wasn't making the kind of money to, you know, to keep it on the air, which is a shame. And they tried to say, oh, it's people want entertain. People don't want entertainment, we were told. They want information. And I thought, okay, that's rubbish. Of course people want entertainment. And the show that replaced us, The Revolution, I think it lasted 2 months.
Yeah, it was a few months and then it was gone.
So anyway, it was, it was a shame.
Well, Erika, this has been so wonderful chatting with you and catching up with you and seeing what's been going on and reliving some of the great old times of Vicki and One Life to Live with You. And you can watch Erika on The Story of Soaps on ABC Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Erika, thank you so much.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. It was delightful talking to you, Michael. And if people do watch The Story of Soaps, you don't blink because you might miss me. There are so many people.
Yeah.
And I did an interview for 2 hours, but I expect they'll use maybe 3 or 4 minutes, as it always happens.
We'll see what they do. We'll see what they do.
Great.
All right. Bye, Erika.
Take care, Michael.